are our enemy. This is the enemy. And so you know that when you can find an enemy, you are strong. You are strong. It's very crucial to build up a political party. But this is not an enemy in the sense of Carl Schmitt, actually, what Hitler did. Because Hitler didn't say the Jews are our own enemies, public enemy. He said this is a biological enemy, because it's a race. It's a race who treats our race. So he invented the field of the Friends, he invented the Aryan population, which were the Germans, but also those living in Austria and a part in Poland, and so on and so forth. So he said the friend is all our race, and the enemy, the Jewish, are our enemy, but it's not a public enemy. It's a biological enemy. It's a private enemy. So you cannot just fight them. You should neutralize, eliminate, cancel them. And so he started to build up extermination camps. Extermination camps is the moment in which Western civilization uses all this technological knowledge to build up hope and to kill people. Very important moment in history, And this was based on this idea that there was an enemy which was not only a public enemy, a biological enemy. To protect your nation, you have to destroy this other race. So racism is very, 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 very important. Then you have mass society. You have a mass society in the sense that society is very, very, very much individualized. It's very much individualized, and you have all these individuals who feel isolated in society and can recognize the leader as the leader of the nation. So it's very different. It's not a society which is divided into classes with different interests, as for example socialism, Marxism says. It's a class based on individuals. These individuals are alone and they recognize the leader who leads them. Totalitarianism, and then you have propaganda. Propaganda, this happened in a moment in which you have very powerful means for propaganda. When fascism and Nazism went power, you had all these new means to get. You had the radio, and so you have mass printing, mass newspapers, so you have these means for propaganda, because propaganda is crucial. This is why right now is so concerning the political use of social media, because through social media, through this control and through this daily and constant way of entering the private life of all individuals, you can really build new totalitarian things. And then you use terror. So the authority of totalitarianism is based on fear. So the use of fear is legitimate because you think you have a nation. You think you have this body of friends, which is a nation, and you have to protect the nation. And so when you have to protect the nation, any means is allowed. So you can use terror, you can use, police, you can remove the right to speech because the totalitarian movement is defending the blood of the nation. So we clearly see that nowadays, in these days, we have similar things because we have a crisis of the globalization that was based on liberal principles, neoliberal principle, on the ideas of globalization, that the idea was that slowly globalization after the end of Cold War between USSR and USA, between NATO and the Varsavia Pact, the idea was that slowly all the world was going to become liberal democracies because capitalism was expanding all over the world, and what we could see is that capitalism was bringing liberal democracies, was bringing democratic institutions. So this is what, so we got international organizations like G20, G8, WTO, World Trade Organization, OECD, Organization for Cooperation and Development, United Nations, and so on. So we had all these international organizations to control how we can make a governance of globalization, in the idea that globalization was going towards establishing liberal democracies all over the world. It didn't go this way. And right now we're facing nationalism because, you know, working class in Western countries especially, they feel globalization didn't help us to improve our conditions. We see that there is this mass migration of people who are stealing our job, our conditions are getting worse, and so they say we want to get back to the nations. We don't want to get back to the nations. So why Donald Trump won the election? Because he said, America first. Let's go back to the idea of America, because the United States of America was something different, was not anymore a nation, was trying to develop a global empire based on its financial interests, in its economic domination all over the world. So it was making wars, it was trying to police the world, and Donald Trump said, okay, let's go back to America first. Let's make America great again as a nation, Let's do mass deportation of all the migrants, you know, and then you have national parties also, you know, growing up in Germany, again, because in Germany you have AfD, Alternative für Deutschland, who says, yeah, we have to do de-immigration, re-immigration, we have to send back all migrants to their countries. You know, and also in Italy we have far right of the government because they use it very well. The point of saying migration is a problem. Migrants are our enemies right now that are killing our society because they're selling drugs in the street, they're raping women, they're stealing jobs, and so on and so forth. So, the point is, we will go again in the direction of totalitarianism, yes or not? Because the problem when you have nationalist movement is that they want to say our nation must be more powerful than the other nation. We have to protect the interest of our nation, but often it's in conflict with the interest of other nations. So often it ends up in words. Like, for example, Putin is for sure a nationalist. Russian and is supporting Russian nationalism, who say we have to protect our nation against the Western countries trying to control Ukraine. So totalitarianism. You have a mass society, you have a strong leader, you have an ideology based on the internal enemy, you know, and you have the use of terror. Hannah Arendt was very smart philosopher in describing this and then inventing this notion. So he wrote this book, The Origin of Totalitarianism, to describe totalitarianism as a distinct form of government, you know, a distinct form of government who want to create a new political system. Okay, so this is one part. So the book, you see the principles in the slides. The book is The Origin of Totalitarianism. But we consider two books by Hannah Arendt. We consider two books. One is The Origin of Totalitarianism, in which she established the principles of totalitarianism, and the other book is Eichmann in Jerusalem. It's about Eichmann in Jerusalem, which is the banality of evil. The other book, so one book is The Origin of Totalitarianism, and the other is The Banality of Evil. So she made pretty interesting and big case. So this is Hannah Arendt when she immigrated to New York.
Isn't it incredible that the Hannah Right, just offering to report for us. She should be begging to write for the New Yorker.
Musste denn wirklich ankommen?
Ich werde mir das nie verzeihen, wenn ich diese Gelegenheit nicht verhandeln würde.
Joanna, in honor of her trip to Jerusalem.
Meine Haare!
Dieser Prozess ist sehr wichtig für uns.
Hat man Ihnen nachgewiesen, dass die Juden Wissen vernichtet werden? Ich habe sie vernichtet. Eichmann kein Antisemit? Was ist denn das für ein Unfug?
Dass ihr das selber gehört habt, nur den Gesetz gehabt.
Anna, bitte, du kannst das so nicht schreiben, nicht für New Yorker.
They were recognized Jewish leaders, and this leadership cooperated with the Nazis. They'll have our heads for this.
In den Daily News gab es folgende Schlagzeilen. Hannah Arendt's bizarre defense of Eichmann.
Sie denken, deine Artikel sind großartig. Und die wünschen dir den Tod. Manche sogar auf sehr fantasievolle Weise.
The greatest evil in the world is the evil committed by nobodies.
Did you really have no idea there would be such a furious reaction?
Trying to understand is not the same as forgiveness.
Ich war bestimmt so weit gegangen.
It is this phenomenon that I have called the banality of evil.
So, what happened to Hannah Arendt? What happened to Hannah Arendt? Erika, you have a presentation, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
I know.
Now, yeah. So, what happened to Hannah Arendt? That right now we're gonna see more in detail. More in detail. What happened? What happened? Is that we have. So let's remind. Hannah Arendt is a German Jewish who had to escape Nazi Germany because Hitler was gonna exterminate all the Jewish, so his family and so on. So this is the context, and she escapes to New York City, and she becomes an important. Start making your things. So she escaped to New York City. Okay, she goes to the United States of America to live there. When she lives there, you know what happened? It happens an important thing because World War II was ended. All the Nazi Germans were processed. There was a trial in Nuremberg and so on. Blah. But there was one guy who did escape from Germany and was not taken. You know, he was the number two on Nazism. Because number one was Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler shot himself because he didn't want to die. Eichmann survived and escaped to Argentina. Because Argentina, you have this horrible regime of of fascism, and they were saying, okay, you come German Nazis, we're gonna protect you. So he escaped. He made a new life in Argentina. What was the point of Eichmann? Eichmann was in charge of the so-called final solution. So Hitler went to Eichmann and said, Eichmann, you have to exterminate all the Jews. Okay, this is your task. Now look, it's not a good thing, right? To exterminate all the Jews. No, it's not that you say. Yeah. Well, so she has you use her to. Okay.
She wants to exterminate someone.
Who do you want to exterminate? International students. You want to exterminate international students. Okay, so let's say I'm Hitler, she's Eichmann. I say, this Jewish problem, we have a problem with Jews, we have too many Jews and blah, blah, blah. What can we do? And you say, yeah, we can do the final solution. We can kill all of them. And Hitler say, good idea, Eichmann, you're gonna do it. Okay, so Eichmann was in charge of exterminating all the Jews. When Germany was defeated, he escaped to Argentina. At the same time, World War II was ended, as a reparation. Western countries established Israel as a Jewish nation, So, Israel, first thing that say, we're a nation, right now we have to go retaliation against the guy who wanted to exterminate all of them. So at the end they managed to go to Argentina to kidnap him and to bring him to Jerusalem. and to make a public trial against the guy who tried to kill all the people. So, you know, the Jewish, they take things seriously. Even if you read the Torah, you have this God is pretty bad, he's very good in retaliation. So, they wanted to do this. They do a public trial, the most important trial in the 20th century. So what Hannah Arendt did, when she wrote to the New York Times, she was writing articles for the New York Times, and they say, New York Times, send me to Jerusalem. I want to write for your journal about this process. I will be there, and every day I will provide you an article on this. So she flies to Jerusalem, and she writes about this article. But she makes a philosophical theory about what was happening there. And this philosophical theory produced some kind of problems. But before we get to this concept of the banality of evil, let's recap again what is totalitarianism so that we can go to this other concept very well. Erika, why are you looking at me like this?
Like how?
So, yeah.
Allora, hello. I would like to talk about totalitarianism, and we're gonna focus on what is in general, and some historical examples, for example, like fascism, Nazism, and Stalinism. And then we're gonna talk about Hannah Arendt, in specific one of her most famous book, which is The Origin of Totalitarianism. And then an example of, I wrote it wrong, come back, of an example nowadays, which is North Korea. This is that. So, the term of totalitarianism has become widely used, often meaning a dictatorial regime, and however, it has sparked debates among historians. Some argue that it oversimplifies and ignores the difference between regimes, and others believe that it's useful to describe similarities of regime. So in 1923, Giovanni Amendola first used the term totalitarianism to describe fascism as a promise of absolute domination, so during Mussolini period. And then only in 1929, the English press applied the term to Nazism, fascism, and communism, referring to regimes seeking total control. And basically, the first time it was used as a totalitarian regime was written by Hannah Arendt and Friedrich Kapfel. So this regime has some common features like the construction of an organic and coherent ideology with a reading of the world, and so basically with only one single party, and all the citizens of that regime should have to adhere. Then the manipulation of information through the use of mass propaganda, media of which the regime holds the monopoly, and the economy was also subjected to the control of the state. And of course, we have a charismatic dictator, which with absolute power, and who creates of himself a cult. And the mass are conditioned and managing time, marked by celebration, rituals, and identification signs. Then we're gonna talk about Stalinism. After Lenin's death, the Russian Revolution lost its leader, but the struggle for secession had already begun. The Bolsheviks were divided into factions, Stalin and Trotsky. For Stalin, he believed that the focus should be on consolidating Russian communism and possibly expanding it through all Europe or through all the world. And Trotsky argued that the union of Soviet Socialist Republics' mission was to spread a permanent revolution worldwide by supporting and arming revolutionary movements. But Stalin gained power, and he started his period, his regime of totalitarianism, He eliminated his political rivals and established a personal dictatorship characterized by terror and also including the famous Great Purges. And Stalin aimed to transform Russia's major cities through ambitious projects like the subway in Moscow and also the seventh skyscraper. Like this is one of the they're so beautiful. And he wants to reproject this subway like a palace of the Tsar instead of a normal subway. Then one of the more common features of totalitarianism is propaganda. Stalin, through media and newspaper, he showed his opponents, his enemies, as the enemies of the country. So he put the idea of these people through the mass, like they're not good. Okay, there's an example of George Orwell. The Big Brother is watching you is literally the example of totalitarianism regime. Like Big Brother is everywhere. He controls you, also your private life. You can do basically nothing. So you are under this one person, and he critiques Orwell critiques Stalinism. He compared Big Brother to Soviet Union system. Sorry.
For what?
No, senza far rumore sto coso, mi sta venendo l'ansia. Sai, via.
Vuoi parlare senza?
Sì.
Ok, spingi.
Oh, grazie.
Prego.
C'è il suso qua, manco fosse lamentante. Comunque, then we have oh. Then we have fascism in Italy. I'm not gonna talk a lot because yesterday we had a great presentation. I don't know if she's here. Maybe you? Yeah. You had a great presentation. So basically, since the mid-1920s, the fascist regime had begun to empty the representative institution in favor of the single party, which is the Grand Council of Fascism and Vittorio Emanuele III. And in 1929, the election, which included only a single list, confirmed the population support for fascism and laid the foundation for the transition from the authoritarian regimes into totalitarian regimes. So, which Mussolini described the new state. So, basically, there was these 22 corporations were established to present different sectors of the economy, and with both employers and employees participating, and cooperatives were state controlled, but they never had decision making. So basically just like, how you said, the face, but behind there was something more like mafia. Then Mussolini also used propaganda, where they were everywhere, in the billboards, building faces, also with the huge face of Mussolini. And the government also controlled the media, silencing opposition and showing only state-approved content. So this allowed to Mussolini to control the public perception and create a cult of himself. And there is Mussolini adopted the title of Duce, which claiming a connection to ancient Rome and presenting himself as a new Caesar. Then we have the other example of totalitarianism regime. But one thing, fascism was not totalitarian regime, because it was with the king, so it wasn't that absolute power. Then we have Nazism, and the Nazi ideology was formulated by Hitler and expressed in Mein Kampf during his imprisonment. And in Mein Kampf, Hitler outlined his plan for an authoritarian government that would restore Germany's weakness. And the Nazi ideology was based on the concept of Volk, which it means people, and the state as a community founded on biological purity and racial homogeneity to restore the German greatness, and the end, Germans as the Aryan superior race. So even though there's no scientific proof that the Aryan people are the superior level of as a person, the stereotypical image of the Aryan man destined to dominate all the inferior race. That's why also the Eichmann in Jerusalem for the Jewish people. And then also here, the Nazi regime quickly took control because Hitler used nationalist feelings and economic struggles and fear of communism to gain support. And in 1933, he became chancellor, and after Reichstag fire, he passed the Reichstag fire decree, and suspending all the civil liberties and the arresting political opponents. So there is this quote written by Ernst Rudolf Huber, a Nazi legal scholar, which is: Die Autorität des Führers ist total und allumfassend. In ihr fließen alle verfügbaren Ressourcen der Nation zusammen. Sie umfasst jeden Aspekt des Lebens des Volkes. So in English it means the authority of the Führer is total and encompassing, and it flows all the available resources of the nation, and it encompasses every aspect of the life. So what it means, this reflects of the totalitarian nature of the regime, emphasizing that Hitler's absolute power over every facet of Germany's life, Germany's people's life. And then the Nazi regime also had, controlled many aspects of German life. The labor reform brought together employers and workers. The Hitler youth trained and indoctrinated young people. The scholar programs were changed to match the regime's beliefs, and in the end, also the free time were controlled by the state to continue the indoctrination. And also, like the other totalitarianism regime, used propaganda, like newspapers, cinema, and also they understand the power of the emerging scientific.
No, it's not me, it's not that you like internal and...
We listen and we don't judge. Emerging like cinema, loudspeaker, radio, like all through the street. There was this music or like poetry saying Nazism is the best system of government. Then we have this album by Pink Floyd, which covers various themes such as childhood, reflects some influence from Nazi imagery and ideology, especially in the portrayal of isolation, control, and authoritarian figures, which can be linked to themes like oppression and dehumanization. Then we have this beautiful woman, the first political thinker, which she was a strong and independent woman, who deeply studied the philosophical thoughts of many ancient and modern thinkers, and she wrote numerous different range of topics, often focused on Jewish, because she was personally connected. But the most famous important works will include The Region of Totalitarianism, The Human Condition, Eichmann in Jerusalem, but today we're gonna talk about The Region of Totalitarianism. So, it's an important book, because it understands how totalitarian regimes such as Nazism and Stalinism emerged, and why they were able to take hold of entire societies in the 20th century. Arendt investigative causes and mechanisms behind the rise of such regimes, offering insights into the social, political, and historical conditions that make totalitarianism possible. So, Arendt's main goal in this work was to explore the origin of this regime. So he made some she wrote some questions like what happened during the 20th century that allowed such oppressive regimes to emerge. Why did it happen, and why and how it was possible for totalitarian regime to gain control? So, Arendt analysis addressed how the world found itself in a situation where entire population could be manipulated and controlled by this regime. And she compared and contrasted Nazism and Stalinism, and analyzing them as two forms of the same totalitarian system, and both regimes employ similar tactics of control, like terror and repression, use of ideology to justify their action and to suppress any opposition, and cult of personality. Then Arendt argues that totalitarianism emerged out of specific historical condition, which is imperialism, anti-Semitism, and the kind of class-based society. And then also Arendt stressed that terror is the central to the functioning of totalitarianism regimes, as the professor said earlier. And this terror comes in two forms: the secret police, where they oppress the opposition, and the concentration camps and death camps, like it happened during the Second World War with Nazism. Then, an example of nowadays totalitarian regime is North Korea, which is one of the most extreme example. And this country is ruled by Kim family dynasty, and right now is being ruled by Kim Jong-un. And I think everyone knows how it's going right now. They don't have any liberties, not freedom of speech. They have to attend all the celebrations, all the military parades. They don't even have a private life because the camera everywhere, and even you do something, a little something, you've been like in detention, something like that. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Erika. Very good presentation, Erika. And also thank you for your support in organizing the conference. Very good presentation. You also took 30 cum laude at the exam, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Danke.
Danke. You speak German too, eh?
Yeah.
Wow. So, do you speak Philippine?
Of course.
What else?
Spagnolo.
Italianos are the Sicilian, let's say, eh? More Sicilian, strict Sicilian. So Hannah Arendt made all this theory of totalitarianism. Okay, made all this theory of totalitarianism. The concept was already, somebody used it, but she really made a philosophical, theoretical concept in the history of political thought. Okay? So what happened is that when Eichmann goes to Jerusalem to get the trial, she sees the opportunity to see how totalitarianism actually works in the choices, in the decisions, in the behavior of one person who was really important part of a totalitarian regime. So she goes to Jerusalem and she thinks, right now I can discover how it actually works. I can investigate how it actually works. I will write for the New York Times and I will further develop my theory. So she goes to Jerusalem, okay?
I'm standing in front of the building where in only a few hours' time what is being described described as the trial of the century will begin, and the eyes of the world will fall upon Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi responsible for organizing the mass murder of 6 million European Jews. It isn't only Eichmann who will be on trial over the next few days and weeks. The state of Israel will also be under intense scrutiny as it attempts to mount a fair trial of the man tasked with destroying the Jewish people. This city, this country, the entire world is under a state of heightened anticipation. The stakes could not be higher.
In televising this trial, the state of Israel hopes to show many of its own people across the world the full horror of what befell those of their faith who lived in Europe through the Nazi era. Israel hopes to impart to a new generation an understanding of the cunning cruelty employed by the Nazis to lure their people to their deaths through the lie they were being sent to work camps. And it is also seeking to impress on the consciousness of humanity that these crimes, which have no precedent in the entire history of man on earth, were committed in an enlightened age, on Jews this time, but could be committed against others in the future, to show the world that, in the end, this is a crime that affects every one of us.
This is it. Moment of truth.
What was he thinking at this precise moment?
Of everything that had gone on.
So what they did, this guy, Eichmann, so what he did basically is he exterminated 6 million European Jewish who were innocent. They did nothing. They just
The
were
testimony
Jewish.
that convicted Adolf Eichmann of Holocaust atrocities.
So he killed 6 million people, not because they made a felony, just because they were Jewish. Okay, he organized a technology to kill all of them through gas. You know, children, mothers, old people. You know, starving and dying. That was the plan. So, you know, the answer is, but we are liberal democracies. We believe in our values so much that we want to give him a fair trial. So they put it in a fair trial, they give him a lawyer, they give him the possibility to say I'm innocent for this. So they said, okay, let's do a fair trial. You have the opportunity to defend yourself, because we're liberal democracies, and you know, even though you killed all our population, 6 million people, we want you to have a fair trial in front of a room in Jerusalem where you have all the relatives of all these people who died in the concentration camp. But they even protect him, you know, they even protect him so nobody could shoot him, nobody could aggress him, and so on and so forth. So, and they want to listen, you know, they want to do a fair trial. So, I sit down and tell us, you know, and tell us. So it's normal, like everywhere in liberal democracies. So Anna goes there and listens.
Genau wie auf dem Standpunkt stehe, habe hier einen Eidgeleistet, dass ich die Wahrheit sage. Genauso habe ich auf dem Standpunkt gestanden. Zu jener Zeit, Eid ist Eid. Glauben Sie, dass jemand, der diesen Treueeid schwor, nach dem Tode Hitlers von seinem Eid befreit sei oder nicht? Nach dem Tode Hitlers ist selbstverständlich jeder Mann automatisch von diesem Eid befreit. In der polizeilichen Vernehmung.
So what does he say? He starts saying, yeah, but you know, I was a public servant. I entered the government under the Chancellor Adolf Hitler, and I swear that I was respecting, you know, the Third Reich and the German Constitution written by Hitler. So I was respecting this sword that I made. So, yeah, and here Anna Arendt starts to see what's going on.
Wenn Ihnen der Reichsführer gesagt hätte, dass Ihr Vater ein Verräter sei, hätten Sie ihn eigenhändig erschossen. Ist das richtig? Wenn er Verräter gewesen wäre, am Nein, der Reichsführer Ihnen gesagt hätte. No, you were not the Reichsführer. Hätten Sie ihn erschossen mit dem eigenen Vater? Dann sitzt es voraus, hätten wir es nachweisen müssen. Wenn er es nachgewiesen hätte, wären wir nicht auf richtig gewesen, ein Fahrenheit. Hat man Ihnen nachgewiesen, dass die Juden vernichtet werden?
So what does he say? He says, I was a public servant, I had the duty to protect the Germans against this threat. So he said, so if your father was a traitor against the German, would you have killed your father? And they say, yeah, this was my duty, so I would have even killed my father.
Haben Sie nie einen Konflikt geführt, einen Gewissenskonflikt zwischen Ihrer Pflicht und zwischen Ihrem Gewissen? Man könnte es eher Gespaltenheit nennen. Und zwar eine bewusste Gespaltenheit, wo man sich von der einen Seite in die andere flüchtete und umgekehrt. Man hatte auf sein Gewissen zu verzichten. Man hatte auf sein Gewissen, auf sein persönliches Gewissen zu verzichten. Man kann es so ausdrücken. Wenn mehr Zivilcourage gewesen wäre, wäre alles anders gekommen. Sind Sie alle die Zivilcourage ebenfalls hierarchisch aufgebaut gewesen wäre, ganz klar. Jawohl. Das war also nicht ein Schicksal, das kommen musste. Aber es ist eine Frage des menschlichen Verhaltens. Es ist eine Frage des menschlichen Verhaltens und sicherlich ist es nun so gewesen, es war die Kriegszeit, Turbulenz, wie er einst hat gesagt, hat er keinen Zweck, den ich dagegen und hat sein Tropfen auf den heißen Stein verdampft und hat gar keinen Zweck, hat weder sie noch den Krieg Erfolge oder Misserfolge gekriegt. Und so, es muss irgendwie auch in der Zeit liegen, denke ich, der Zeit, Erziehung, also weltanschauliche Erziehung.
So what he says is, he says, the judge said, yeah, but you were exterminating people, like this. You didn't have any problem with your consciousness, with your own self. And he said, but I was acting for my state, for my government, in a time when there was war. So we have constraint. When there is war, you must protect your nation, you must protect your state. So basically what Eichmann says is I was performing my duty as a public servant. I was performing my duty as a servant of the state. I was doing just my job. So Anna Arendt got a bit traumatized from this. Why? Because she went to Jerusalem to see Eichmann and she thought, I will see a monster. I will see the evil. I will see the evil. I will see what is evil in this world. I will see what does it mean. Be evil. So I will see a monster because one person organized the mass extermination of 6 million people can only be a monster. But what he found was not a monster. Was a employee of the state who was claiming I was just performing my job as an employee of my government. So this is why she calls it the banality of evil. The banality of evil. So the banality of evil. She was very struck by the fact that it was just performing his work. So the big scandal was that she was writing for the New York Times. The New York Times and all the Jewish and all the relatives of the Jews exterminated expected articles saying this guy is a monster. It only deserves to die. It only deserves to die because it was a monster and so on. But what she writes is, I don't see a monster. I see the banality of evil. I see one person who is performing the duty that was requested by the state. He's not even angry, doesn't even despise the Jewish. He said, I had a duty, I was just obeying my order. I was obeying the orders of the law. So, this is what she calls the banality the banality of evil. And obviously all the Jewish community all over the world got very angry at Hannah Arendt, saying, yeah, but you're kind of justifying this monster. So let's see if we can find the the final speech. So yeah, she was about, to be expelled from the university. So she gathers her students and she say, I want to have the last say. She gathers the students and she say, I'm going to do a last lecture about my concept of the banality of